Welcome to the Hospitality Chat podcast. My name is Mehdi Rahman, and I have my host Matthew Drummond-Poynter and our guest Kellianne Ngimbi. And we are talking about the seasonal factors, how the seasons may change, and it can affect the restaurant industry in a particular way because it always fluctuates in accordance to the times and the mood and often the season that is taking place, whether it's customers may increase, whether it's either or may increase, remain steady, or even take a dive based on a number of factors. And seasonal changes can have a particular impact on the business in the restaurant industry, which forces many restaurant owners to increase or boost their marketing campaigns or cut back on stock or adjusting staffing levels. And Matthew, what would you say about the seasonal holidays themselves being a factor?
So seasonal holidays, broadly speaking, aren't a particularly good thing for restaurants in terms of because we actually see a decline in kind of like people looking to eat out in that particular seasons as everyone kind of looks to spend their time with kind of like family meals or meals inside with friends and such like. We see this particularly over the Christmas season and other relevant holidays like that. However, this isn't necessarily all doom and gloom, as we also actually see kind of in between those kinds of grand meals, like before and afterwards, an uptick in kind of like ordering like fast food and other such like deliver to your door stuff, as people kind of like after spending like that long cooking like these massive meals, no one wants to cook for like days after that. So we kind of see it. You kind of see an uptick in that particular one. So definitely, if restaurants are looking to capitalize on kind of the convenience end of the spectrum, you'll find that there is actually quite a bit of money to be made during the holiday, even if your traditional dining experience kind of loses custom during that season.
I mean, what would you say in Kellyanne about the decline in the winter time? Because it's often, like Matthew said, there's always the before and after, but it's a very fluctuating time. But there's also sometimes there could be have a negative impact the winter period. What would you say?
Yeah, so I feel like, with families, big families, they want to spend time at home, like cooking and spending time with their families. For the restaurant, it is like a tough time for them with nobody going there or like visiting the restaurants. So yeah, there is a decline in that there.
Not only that, you don't. A lot of customers will be. I'm sorry. A lot of the customers will be less inclined to travel because it's so long and cold and freezing. Especially when the days are becoming much more short in that period as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We kind of see this kind of like decline in like dining in during the winter months as well. And whilst a lot of this is attributable to the holidays and such, we see similar declines continue throughout colder months like January and kind of like the autumn in general. People just generally don't like the idea of going out and traveling to somewhere if the weather's thoroughly miserable. As in our wet and rainy Isle, it's often like thoroughly miserable around about the winter. It's wet, it's horrible, and just no one wants to go out during that. So yeah, we do kind of see this kind of like again decline in like a footfall into dining experiences as a result. Again, conversely, this doesn't impact services that deliver as much because we do see the amount of like delivery services remains relatively constant during these particular periods. So again, if restaurants are looking to have like online ordering services and other such things to make convenient deliveries, then again, this is an opportunity to really capitalize to kind of batten down the hatches for these kinds of like colder off months. Another thing actually that we do see in this regard is the impact that kind of the impact that the cold and warm months kind of make on having like this great big on season, so to speak, where kind of like it's warmer, everyone's going out, and also of course you get the kind of the tourist season beginning in about I believe in the UK it's about July to August, and I think looking into like the impact of that is definitely something that could be useful for our listeners, actually, wouldn't you say, Mehdi?
I mean, yeah, the tourists, you have to take into account to the tourists as well. Like they all, when it comes to like the winter period as well, like central London gets like a huge new like kind of like almost like cosmetic kind of like decoration around different parts of the city, with Trafalgar Square, like with I think the Norwegian government kind of like brings in a Christmas tree or something, like in Trafalgar Square, or I think a lot as well as the the lighting and the Christmas lighting in Regent Street all the way down towards a Piccadilly Circus as well. right where Oxford Circus is as well, like, in that kind of area, because I always see, like, when I'm over walking down, say, Regent Street, and during the Christmas period as well, like, whether I'm taking pictures or whatnot, a lot of the lighting, say, whether it's around Carnaby Street or Oxford Circus, you always see by the shops, where the main roads are going towards Piccadilly, there's always like these kind of fairy, almost like angelic kind of like lighting that takes place, almost like fairy lights in a sense. And I think that's very like a routine. See, it's like a very seasonal kind of like design, I think, every year in the winter period, leading towards Christmas, that happens.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually interesting in that respect, actually, like proximity to a lot of these kinds of like street decorations and markets and such like that crop up over Christmas actually might be a good way that kind of your location can kind of factor into your resistance to kind of seasonality, because while generally we do see drastic people dining out, if you're kind of close to these kinds of like big like Christmas like promenades and like Christmas markets and such, like I actually could see that you could even possibly see an increase in footfall around that particular time, as people, like, after they've done their Christmas shopping and such, like they kind of cap off their big shopping spree of kind of like eating in at a restaurant or something like that. It's a good way to treat themselves, and it's a good way as a result for restaurants to kind of make money off providing that particular service.
Yeah, like the Christmas, I can imagine like a lot of the winter shopping, I'm sure you guys probably at least have once, going out to the Christmas shopping, and then want to like go out to eat after all is said and done. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you both have like these kind of experiences, right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
so it's sort of
absolutely.
like, oops, sorry, you go.
No, go ahead, mate.
Thank you. It's sort of like when you've done your Christmas shop and you're exhausted and you don't really want to go back home and cook. So then you're just like, oh, there's a restaurant there, let's go eat there, sort of thing. Yeah, and that also brings people in.
It feels like a tradition, isn't it? I mean, like, what places do you often want to visit during the winter period? Like, because often, like, also the choice in restaurants has an factor based on the season, the temperature, the vibe. A lot of restaurants, like, you would want to go somewhere warm and whatnot. Like, what kind of restaurants would you go to if you had in the winter period? If you had, like, done your shopping and that, like, ideally, for like a cuisine in particular, you're feeling for.
I mean, personally speaking, I quite like warm and hearty, I guess, in kind of like the winter months, right? Something like a kind of solid, maybe like quite, maybe kind of a little bit of spice and zing to it. So as a result, actually, personally speaking, I could probably go for an Indian actually during the winter months.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds us of that time we went to film one of the restaurants that we helped with OrderPin, Ashoka restaurant as well. I mean, they had like almost like a Japanese / Indian kind of like restaurant together, and they use the OrderPin services like that we are promoting here. Like the Bossa or the Right Cart app. I feel like when we went there, it felt like it was like a right mood and environment, to have like an Indian, like, in the cold especially. Because we were like when we were helping out with promotion and that, it was that winter period as well that it felt suited to have something very warm and hearty and with a zing of spice, like you say, like an Indian, and that's what we went in Winchmore Hill, innit? Remember?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that was good. And I think this is actually consistent with market trends, actually. We see like a rise in kind of like consumption of like Asian fusion, for example, and those kinds of foods, as well as kind of like solid stuff like barbecue goes up around that time. Everyone like wants a warm belly full of meat in the winter. Um, Pizza actually also apparently gets this kind of like increase in consumption over the winter months, and yeah, I think all those are like kind of examples of kind of like the kinds of cuisine that restaurants maybe want to kind of like try and make sure they have on their menu during the winter season.
Yeah, and despite the decline in the winter we talked about as well, there's also like non-weather related seasonal changes. Like, it's not all. It depends on the location of your restaurants, whether it's from cities and towns or colleges and universities that would make up the population for the restaurants to take in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess to start things off, keep an eye on how many staff you're going to have on hand during like different like seasons and such like, because during like the warm summer months, you may have a shortfall of staff if you're not planning accordingly, because you know a lot of your staff are going to be going on their summer holidays around Christmas, of course. Many of your staff are going to be requesting time off for Christmas and such like, and all these things mean that you've got to be careful and make sure that you actually have enough staff on hand on those given days to be able to serve in those times, particularly during the summer months when people are going on holiday, because there's going to be an increased footfall there due to increased numbers of like tourists and such like. So you want to make sure you have all hands on deck there, and perhaps you'll need to like hire some temporary contractors and such like to fill up any staff shortfalls you have.
I mean, not only that,
Yeah.
I feel like students would like staying over for the summer would have like want to have jobs during the summer. I think promoting the idea of summer jobs as well would be helpful to tackle that kind of summer seasonal change that will cause the dip in staff in personnel. Would you say? You know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
So,
sorry,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So when I was a student, our town was sort of like there was lots of restaurants there, and that's where most students go to look for jobs, and they'll be like, yeah, whether that's temporary or like permanent jobs, just to help the restaurant out during different seasons as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
no. Definitely. Yeah, you can get like a quite a hefty amount of like student staff around about those particular times. Yeah, obviously you've got to make sure that you have enough experienced staff on deck to train them, because a lot of these chaps are coming in with minimal experience. But to be fair, a lot of students who are coming looking for summer jobs, this isn't their first rodeo with doing like summer jobs in hospitality. So actually, you may find that there's actually quite a lot of kind of experienced staff lying around looking for work around that time. And yeah, that can really help you during, I think, like the warm summer months when business is up and you need more staff than you normally do.
I mean, with in terms of like the hospitality industry, students are like it's a very common trend where students that would like going into say hospitality as a way to make money during the summer or to work into their schedule as whether it's university students or like secondary school students. I mean, I joined hospitality when I was like first year uni. It was my first ever job, getting into, the working, like in the working kind of like environment. And I feel like that's a common thing as well, where the flexibility of students as well as promoting your jobs as either 0-hour contracts or promoting it as like a summer job for like the summer. I feel like these are ideas where you could have to accommodate to the seasonal changes that may have occurred. Like in the winter, you have the winter holidays and winter breaks, and the summer for the summer holidays, you want to have the summer jobs available.
Yeah, and I guess in other topics regarding like seasonal changes and things that can affect things, you actually also want to keep an eye on how you can get like different ingredients and such like, because of course, particularly in the realm of produce, there's different like growing seasons for different items and such like, and so you got to make sure when like making your menu for like different seasons that you can actually source those ingredients. As like let's use strawberries as an example. Plentiful in the summer months, you can get them relatively easily for all your desserts and such like, but come winter, there's going to be a lot less people who are producing strawberries at that point in time, and you either have to get them imported, you either have to like get frozen rather than fresh, which obviously can kind of cause issues with quality. A lot of customers prefer fresh produce, or of course there are local like farmers who do kind of produce some of these things in like some of the off months, but it's there's going to be a lot more kind of like restaurants asking for it of them, so there's going to be a higher demand, which often causes these things to like double or maybe even triple in price sometimes, depending on how crucial the demand is. So yeah, your menu kind of structure and what ingredients you're using is definitely something you want to consider when looking at how the seasons affect your restaurant.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, and not only that, it depends on the state of the economy as well. Like, if the economy is doing well, the people will be much more free to spend their money on dining out, whether it's if it takes a very dramatic dip, the country's economy, like it depends on the market in the area, like how it's reacting to, say, the changes in the economic sector. It could have a cause in like dips in sales, like people want to look after their pennies a bit more better than not eat out than they should than ever.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw this in kind of the wake of like the wake of the COVID panini. In that kind of like people who were like laid off en masse of obviously had limited amount of money. At which point we kind of saw a contraction in like spending on like what are considered luxuries, like eating. In that case, obviously, be takeout rather than ordering out because restaurants were shut. But yes, and so that's just a recent example, but this is consistent with other trends like after the credit crunch and other such crises where economic downturns cause people to earn less money. People who earn less money are less likely to get like what they consider non-essentials, and unfortunately restaurants usually end up classified in that in people's minds and getting cut. So yeah, definitely you also want to keep in mind those kinds of things, and maybe if there's like a financial crisis or economic downturn, you might need to like scale things back because demand might be kind of lessened in that regard. So yeah, definitely keep up to date with like financial news and such, like if possible, because keeping on top of these trends and adjusting accordingly can really kind of like help you preempt kind of like swings in demand.
Not only that as well, I think there's ways to compensate those demands through like say different innovative like combating the seasonal change themselves rather than just going along with it. Like owners should take steps of increasing their marketing strategies and marketing campaign for their restaurants, to make sure that they're trying to as effective their marketing campaign can be to limit the seasonal decline that usually would occur for a lot of restaurants. And not only that, some stuff like say special offers or special deals, because when you're in case there's no choice where you have to buy from a different supplier, which are a bit cheaper as well as the quality may drop you're going to have to give it the incentive as well with it, where or at least with the not the typical produce that we use, but a way to offer to the product for the customers in compensation to that is offering deals like 2-for-1 meals or 25% off their checks or free appetizers or desserts, or just buy like a medium to a large drink, you get like a free item or like a free sandwich from their local businesses. It's just a way to increase the bottom line, would you say, and the product development of the off season, developing new items, trying to entice them, because a lot of places like say Starbucks and Costas, they usually make like drinks like coffee or coffee drinks or coffee not coffee drinks, and also desserts, or like say in relation to the season, like say like in Halloween for example would be like a pumpkin spice latte or kind of thing. Would you say Kellianne, Matthew?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. The goal of kind of like when off season rolls around, your goal is basically to chuck as much as you can in there to try and make sure that you can keep like your customers coming in at relatively constant levels. You're never going to be able to match like the peak seasons, but if you can just get it above so you're not getting in the red, that's going to be your primary aim here. You've already touched on like a few things like offering like seasonal items and such like, and you can actually go a step further in order like offer like a whole seasonal menu. I mean, we see some of this stuff in like obviously like Christmas menus and holiday menus, but you can also just re-gear your entire menu sometimes to kind of like cater to like the different like tastes and shift which kind of change throughout the seasons. Like we've talked before about what like preferences increase in winter, but also during the summer, like you see an increase in kind of like colorful and like zany food like modern like Mediterranean and such like. And doing that means that again you can kind of like keep like catering to what your customers actually want, keep keep like level relatively constant. Other ways you can kind of like do that actually is by kind of like offering like I mean, we've touched on a little bit on it before, but like kind of like offering like online ordering services to kind of like cater to that kind of like people who want to like eat in now that like the winter months have rolled around and they don't want to go out and such like. And yeah, offering an online ordering system is really a good way of doing that, and if your restaurant doesn't have one, then I would definitely recommend that you do so. because a lot of them are actually relatively easy to set up, like OrderPin's right cart. You just copy paste like a few lines of code into your site, and it sets you up with an online ordering system right off the bat. There's also obviously like stuff you can use for like if you're on Wix, there's online ordering stuff for that. You just have to find them in their like apps, their places marketplace. And yeah, all of this stuff can really help kind of like keep levels relatively constant.
And not only that as well, I think what restaurants should do as a way of trying to combat it is the push to co-branding relationships. Like, for example, I remember when I was a few years back when I was in secondary school, where before the Panini, of course, there's a Cineworld in our area, and they had these bunch of different restaurants, like say I think it was like what was it called? It was like Frank something. It was like what was the restaurant?
Frank and Benny's?
Frank and Benny's, yeah, that's it. There was a Frank and Benny's next to our cinema, and they always do like a co-branding relationship with Cineworld, where if you're a moviegoer of your nearest Cineworld and you go to those restaurants, like the Frank and Benny's restaurant, you get a discount based as a moviegoer. And I think that's an important thing to have when, to help increase your bills and observe a spike in the business as, some say major motion picture films, like say, for example, we'll talk about the latest film, the Spider-Man No Way Home film, and it's on all cinemas. And if Frank and Benny's, if it was still there, and Cineworld and showing the film as it is right now, and you can have that observing spike as the many moviegoers from the No Way Home viewing comes to Frank and Benny's for like almost like what people would have is like a debriefing through eating out, after a film, like to debrief of what they saw in the film. I think that's kind of common, but yeah, you would see like a big spike in people coming in from the cinema, going right next door to the restaurants that are working alongside the cinema so you see like a huge increase, and then you attract an entirely new market of people to cater, the people who go from the cinema to your restaurant rather than the local environment itself. I mean, that's what it really works out for. I mean, and speaking of which, you did talk about as well with the seasonal menus and whatnot, but also it kind of adds a novelty factor as well with the seasonal menu that you talked about earlier. You try to keep things fresh and new, but also in order to really show off your seasonal menu, you have to invest in online marketing a lot. And we did talk about this before about social media, about how you would, and not only that, opening your social media accounts doesn't take that much effort as well. Like you said about the OrderPin system, it doesn't take much effort. You just got to, you kind of like, you build your own brand as well of your restaurant up and try and invest your business, your marketing, and by increasing your online presence here, you can bring a tide of new customers, and whilst your competitors creep around the slower days,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, actually, it's a good, kind of good that you mentioned social media marketing, actually, because another aspect that kind of like changes with seasons, and particularly holidays, is keyword searching. Because of course, like what the terms people are searching online and such changes according to like the seasons and such like. So mentioning like, I don't know, let's go back to Christmas as the example. Mentioning like Christmas in your social media marketing and social media posts around about like about Christmas's arrival is an excellent way to kind of piggyback off that particular search term, potentially get more traffic into your social media, which can then kind of redirect, of course, into traffic onto your website and online ordering systems, and maybe even footfall into your dining experience as a whole. And yeah, it's just an excellent way to kind of like be aware of current trends and kind of piggyback off that to promote your restaurant as a whole. On the topic of actually going back to tie-ins actually as well, it's actually an excellent way to piggyback again off the kind of like success of like other like industries, because while holidays generally speaking aren't so good for restaurants, there's often like holiday like let's talk about movies actually. There's like a holiday releases for like movies, like the Christmas slot of course for cinema is a hotly contested one. So it means that if having a tie into that means that they're going to be getting a lot of increased footfall for like that Christmas release. which means that then they see the tie-in, they decide to go eat out afterwards, as I'm sure we all do. As you mentioned earlier, it's kind of just nice to debrief. There's like a Pizza Express outside, like where I go and watch movies, and so it's just a tradition to pop down there afterwards. And yeah, it's just a good way to kind of like benefit off that and just soften that blow of kind of like the downtick in custom.
I mean, you can also host events and promote those events on social media. Like, you know, like a lot of restaurants nowadays I'm seeing is they a lot of host their spaces, like the restaurant spaces for private occasions or events that they're hosting themselves as an apart from the typical, you know, dining service. They want a private, an entirely new service, push into hospitality services that they can provide, you know, networking events, birthday parties, wine and food tasting events, even cooking classes even. And then there's private business parties, charity events, live music. And I'm seeing a weird one called speed dating that's happening lately, which is very scary if anything to think about. Based on my own standards of social interaction, that's probably terrifying and doesn't feel so quick actually, if it feels like it. But also even live sports and movie screenings for restaurants as well. I think they're taking a lot more measures, I think, trying to create innovative, if anything, more out of the box methods to kind of counteract the off-season periods.
Yeah, no, I mean, with hosting events and such, like, again, it's a good way to kind of capitalize off kind of like the holidays, which are normally a bit of a downtick, but you can host things like Christmas parties, like a kind of like board gaming bar that I visit, kind of has like its Christmas party and New Year's party that they kind of host, and again, it's just a good way to kind of like drive custom. You can make money off selling tickets as well as kind of like the actual cost of whatever they're buying. Also, there's other events that you can host for people, right? I mean, work parties, of course. How many workplaces have like Christmas parties and such like during that particular time of the year? Again, it all just kind of like helps like provide like opportunities to make up for that kind of downswing that would normally happen.
But you know, one thing as well, I'm seeing this as well. Like, we probably went to Trafalgar Square, and you've seen little pop-up places, you know, like in Trafalgar Square for the season, like, you know, say hot dog places, or if not anything, restaurants are in smaller kind of mobiles, in like festivals and stuff like that. And I think pop-up restaurants are becoming much more of a hit lately. And it's like a new trend. You know, like say people want to explore new territories without being restricted to their own restaurant space, I think. And there's no sense of commitment as well. You could either one for 1 week, 1 month, or just for the weekends. And not only that, the pop-up restaurant idea, it's a fun way for people to come and see, you know, because it's such a novelty as well, despite it being a newer trend that is building up. And not only that, and if your restaurant is doing so well and you can use the capital from that restaurant to run that kind of strategy, implement new business strategies to attract your customers who are in the mood to kind of like, you know, like people are afraid to like, you know, venture something new, you know, it's like you're getting put off like of doing something new every single time. But a pop-up restaurant will push your restaurant forward in front of them to force them, in a sense, to come and see what it's all about and seeing like the hype what is all about your restaurant. And if the success of your pop-up goes, you can redirect them to your main restaurant where the full items of your menus can be unleashed to your customers and they can enjoy such a wonderful experience from what they've seen from your food, from your pop-up restaurant, as like, consider it like a little preview to the main viewing. Loving the cinema, something like the film kind of puns. I'm not letting that go now.
No, I'll vouch for pop-up restaurants. Oh yeah. I mean, like walking along, like, I don't know, like the South Bank and such, like, and seeing all the little like pop-up like restaurants and street food stands and such, like, it's just great. And yeah, no, absolutely. I like to like pop into like at least one of them, usually on a walk near around about that area. I didn't do it this year because you know, COVID and all that, but no, looking forward to next year, providing this is all under control by then.
Not only that, I think that's what it is. I think the best way to round off this kind of episode in a way, because I think when we talked about the tourist season and everything like that, it's all about as the season changes continuously, there are always going to be factors that will push you down. It's all about finding ways to get out of those ruts that you're in. And I think you've got to learn to adapt and prepare. And I think that's it. I think this is probably like what we talked about before. I think you've got to prepare for the worst. And you have to plan for success, not fail to plan at all, you know? Yeah, because if you fail to plan, then it's kind of like with exams, if you plan for success, you'll be all right. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail, That's what my old, like from school, they always say that, for when it comes to exam periods. Scary times, but
So are we setting less restaurant owners homework then in this podcast?
Yes, pretty much. But we're just helping out the restaurant owners and helping out the industry by giving for what we understand and what we learn as both people who are researchers plus consumers of restaurants. We're also customers as well in our own right, because we go to restaurants as well like anyone else, and there's always standards that everyone has, and sometimes it's better to learn from the customers at times. I think, like we say about feedback, it's always important. Plan for success, and if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail, or vice versa.
Philosopher Mehdi, at your service.
Yes. Anyhow, I think that's all the time we've got for right now. And this is the Hospitality Chat. My name is Mehdi Rahman, my host, Drummond-Poynter, and our guest again, Kellianne Ngimbi. And I would say thank you for turning up, guys. And let's hope to bring up more of the good work that we do and trying to provide a good support for the restaurants industry. I would say thank you. And not only that, make sure you like, subscribe, click the bell for the notifications, and all of that. And please comment, because we want to know what you guys think, and it is going to be interesting to see what you all think about what we do and whatnot, and try and figure out how we can do to improve, because we need to learn how to be more better and successful. Until then, I would say thank you and goodbye.